Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Mr. Larry Nichols. Larry, wonderful to have you back.
Well, thank you. It's good to be here, literally.
You're sounding strong, Larry, and we've named today's episode. Larry Nichols told you this was coming. There was a long period, Larry, where I was extremely worried that we might not get to speak to one another again, so I am truly pleased to know that you are recovering and feeling well and back with us here on Crowdsource the Truth. I do want to remind people that it's really important that people visit nicholslive.com and you can use Larry's PayPal address to financially support him. If you go to the nicholslive.com webpage and click on donate, it's going to bring you to all the information that you need. Just go to paypal.com, enter Nichols Live at AOL, and select friends or family, and help Larry with a financial contribution of your choice. You can also send him cash in Conway, Arkansas. Larry, it's been a harrowing period for many people not hearing from you, but you predicted with alarming accuracy the socialist revolution that we're seeing in the streets of basically every American city now.
Well, yes, and in a way, I'm I'm proud that it's triggered so early. If these people knew what they were doing, they would work to focus on getting Biden elected and then pull some of the stuff that they're pulling. But thank God they didn't. They brought it out now, so people are getting an early preview of the beginning of the end. It starts small, one town, then it goes city, and then it goes to another, then it goes to another. And the next thing you're going to see preemptively, I believe, is the Islamic group. They're going to declare a caliphate in some city here, whether it's
Whoa.
Dearborn, Michigan, I don't know, but it'll be one of the places.
Wow. I would think Minneapolis would probably be the place for that. There's a high concentration of Somali immigrants and large number of mosques being built there. That's, of course, where Ilhan Omar is from. Are you surprised, Larry, to see the amount of power that such young freshman Congress people have been able to gain?
Well, no, yes, and no. The yes is that, remember, Jason, even those of the other political persuasion than you and I and most of this audience, they too see where Washington is broke. All right, it's just gone. I mean, it's not working anymore. So it does not surprise me that some of these younger people get in, and that's just the way it is. They get in, but in a way, it does surprise me in that the lack of decorum that they use. Rightly or wrongly, there's been a decorum for some 200 and something years, and a showing of respect to each other that just is gone. It is just gone.
Yeah. I mean, particularly when Rashida Tlaib said we're going to impeach the mother effer, talking about the president of the United States. I mean, what we're also seeing, Larry, is that these younger people in Congress are quite adept at promoting themselves through social media. So they're using the very powerful tool. I mean, early on, it seemed to me that using social media with personalities like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez was some kind of an effort to counteract Trump's effectiveness in using Twitter.
It could be, but I mean, probably is. But I will say this: the social media, I believe, absolutely took Congress by surprise, and I'm talking about the elders in both parties. I think it just totally caught them by surprise, and it has changed the dynamics of the upcoming elections. It's changed. It has changed so much. And remember, if you can go on the internet and you like to watch birds fly, I mean, that's what you like.
Yep.
You'll find some group or person that agrees with you that the birds flying are white, and you say, well, no, the birds flying are black. But you'll find through social media a group that you can build off of, kind of like an audience, ready-made audience that you can build off of.
Yep.
And so I think what they have done, maybe on purpose, probably accidentally, what they have done is they have captured this hate Trump movement so much that, the old guard Democrat Jason just cannot excite this younger group. It's hard for me to admit, but as of tomorrow, I'm a crippled old man. I'll be 70.
Oh, happy birthday, Larry.
Well, thanks. It's just a matter, to be honest, for all of us, is we're seeing the changing of the guard.
Yeah, well, that's
there
for
was
sure.
There was a time when it was our turn, and now we're seeing the changing of the guard. And to these younger people, they're standing up and declaring that it's their turn now. But the problem is, you have George Soros and all of these people that want to destroy America. They're sitting back and tapping into it. And with that comes socialism.
Yeah. That's the real scary part, is that it seems like there are, whether they're in Congress or out in the street protesting, rioting, whatever it is that they think they're doing, it seems like there are a lot of people certainly under 40, maybe under 30, who think socialism is a fantastic idea. And also, while we're on the subject of your birthday, Larry, I think it's a good opportunity for people to maybe send Larry a birthday card. You can send it to him in Conway, Arkansas, or you could send him a digital greeting by going to paypal.com and using his PayPal address, nicholslive@aol.com. The other thing that was going on, Larry, that a lot of people are commenting on right now is this. There was a hearing this morning, slightly delayed due to Gerald Nadler getting into a car accident. It's kind of ironic. He himself is something of a train wreck, but we had William Barr testifying before this absolutely ridiculous. I mean, it's basically what we've come to expect. They've sort of turned Congress into a wild podcast where they just berate the guy and they're not actually learning anything. They're putting out their own message, right?
That's right. And if you'll notice, each and every one of the Democrats charged into, what's his name? My mind just went blank. Just had a brain cramp. Barr, yes.
Yeah.
You'll notice that all the Democrats went into Barr and they came away with their questioning to where they have a good soundbite for their advertising for their reelection bid.
Yeah. I mean, it was literally just like, it's strange because I think when the average person watches a congressional hearing, in your mind, it's very similar to a court proceeding or some kind of, official thing. But they're basically just yelling at William Barr and leading the witness. Like almost everything they say in Congress would be struck down by a judge in court as not allowed.
Absolutely. And, just remember, there could be, you would know, I would know, we would know, so therefore I would hope the Democrats in Congress knew. There's nothing they're going to pry out of William Barr. There's just not. He doesn't have to answer, and he's not going to answer some of the juicier things that they want to get out. So they're relegated to trying to trick him into letting something slip. And he's too much of a seasoned pro to fall for that.
Yeah. No, for sure. And I
So
mean,
all
it just,
it could have ever been, Jason, all this whole hearing could have ever been was for the purposes of giving each of the Democratic members a soundbite or an action shot of them defying Trump
yeah.
through
And
William Barr.
that's what they were accusing the Attorney General of. I mean, the questions were so leading and the narrative so far from the actual truth. Gerald Nadler it was pretty interesting. Jim Jordan opened it with a video showing footage of, we've all seen it. Some of it we've seen with our own eyes, of people lighting police cars on fire, shooting fireworks into federal courthouses, trying to burn down businesses, smashing windows. And Nadler sat there insisting that these were peaceful protesters being attacked by the vicious Donald Trump. And then when Barr tried to answer, Nadler said his time is up and he wouldn't let him answer. I thought the protocol is you got to let the guy answer even if your time is up.
You do. But now here again, that is a professional courtesy. Very seldom do you ever see, although they can, very seldom, if ever, do you ever see them not allowing the person to answer. I mean, but that just shows you it was all rigged. That's what this new government's going to be made up of, Jason, and that's what I've tried to forewarn everybody. If the other side wins, remember, it's very difficult to believe that there are people out there that hate Trump enough to come and vote against Trump and vote him out, while at the same time voting for Republicans. So there is, if Trump goes, there's a better than average, probably a 75% possibility that so too would go the Senate. Now, imagine having the House, the Senate, and then just a doofus as president.
Yeah.
I mean, we're in trouble deep. We're in trouble deep because they are that close. And it is, Jason, it's like this new world. I mean, imagine me being out for months. Yeah. Just being out, not seeing, not hearing.
I don't have to imagine it. It happened.
Yeah, well, it did. But imagine waking up from that and seeing what is going on now, with the protest and the burning of the cars, spitting on the officers, throwing rocks at them, throwing Molotov cocktails at them. Right. I'm sitting there going, what world, God messed up. I've come back to a different planet.
Right. It had to be a real psychological shock for you.
It was, I assure you, it was.
Did you think you were dreaming?
Well, yeah, in a way. I mean, it just wasn't real. It was surreal. This is just crazy. But it's what I've seen before when I've tried to forewarn you and your audience of what's coming. Now y'all have got to look at it. And you say, well, but they're not gaining anything. Well, let me tell you, if you go to every one of those cities and you ask all the Black Lives Matters protesters, what do you want? What is it that you want? They can't tell you. Yeah. They cannot tell you. The only thing they can tell you is they want the government gone.
Yeah.
They want a new kind of government.
It's very disjointed, the whole movement. It seems like some people have one agenda, others have another agenda. There's a whole, trans movement in there that certain people who want reparations. You told us about, I got to be very honest with you about this, Larry. Some of the stuff that you told me, I remember close to the beginning of when we started doing shows together, you said some stuff and I was like, this can't possibly be correct. But it's everything you said has come to pass.
Yeah. Well, and more is coming to pass. This, as I say, is just the beginning of the end. And, you've already seen, for those that say, well, there can't be a caliphate, right? For those that say there cannot be a caliphate, not in America. And what a caliphate is an area that is totally removed from the United States. It is a Muslim community or city now, and it's totally removed from the United States. They don't have to worry about the Constitution. They don't have to worry about anything because their religion will rule, just as if it were in Afghanistan or where
Somalia,
Iraq,
whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, for those of you that say, "Well, that's nuts," now you've gone too far. That will never happen. And remember, the way I got y'all to remember this, I hope, is I said, now, if there is a caliphate, what can be done? What can the president or anybody else do to bust it up? Because you can't imagine blowing up the whole area like you did in Fallujah or like we did in Fallujah. You just can't. I mean, how do you bust up the caliphate? Well, here's your example. Go to Portland.
Right.
Go to Portland and look at that area they declared.
Well, Seattle, right, the Chaz, the Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone. They've basically done it, and it stayed for weeks. Mm-hmm. The cops did nothing.
And the only reason they changed it or stopped it was because they were not able to manage it themselves, so they had to stop. They were just hurting themselves. They didn't have food. They didn't have water. They didn't,
Yeah.
But the important thing to notice was that the mayor, the governor, had nothing they could do. Nothing.
Well, but Larry, isn't it true that they chose pretty much to do nothing? I mean, we had a shorter period of time where there was a city hall autonomous zone here in New York City. And it was astounding to me. I went over there and there was supposedly this whole, we've got this dangerous, deadly, pandemic going on, but they allowed all these vagrants to kind of like roll around and have kind of like a festival of some kind in a park that just a few weeks before the police threw me and a bunch of people who weren't handing out baked ziti and defecating on the lawn, they threw us out and said that the place had been closed by order of the governor and that we had to leave. And I said to them, wait a minute, you can't do that. This is First Amendment. The guy had no badge. I asked him for his badge. He told me to tell it to the judge, Larry, and it was Friday afternoon. What do you interpret a police officer instructing me to tell something to the judge on a Friday afternoon to mean?
Well, I tell you what it means. Number one, he knows that, number one, if he is a police officer, he knows if he's an officer on a Friday afternoon, if he gets you and just throws you in the jail, you're going to stay there until Monday.
Right.
When a judge can review your case, number one. Number two, this whole thing of talk to a judge just shows you how it's all canned.
Yeah.
There will be a time if Trump loses when some guy claims he's police, claims he's a police officer, and demands you do something, whatever that something is. And there'll be nothing you can do about it. Not a thing. Because under that scenario, law enforcement, once again, has a bite. Where it doesn't now. I mean, now there's no way I'd be a cop today. No way.
Right. Well, and the cops that are already employed, they're so demoralized because so much of this movement has already succeeded, Larry. They've reduced the budget for the NYPD by $1 billion. I mean, that's 1/6 of their total budget. I don't understand, first of all, how that's going to help. And second of all, how you can cut a budget that large from an organization that complicated in the short period of time in which they did it. I would imagine it would require a detailed audit, good understanding of where too much money is being spent. It would seem like it would take a year to cut $1 billion out of a budget and have it not be disastrous.
Well, what they did in what you were saying about planning, etc., they took every aggressive, proactive department within the police department, and that was the criteria to cut them out. Right. That's how they came up with the billion. So, in other words, now, here's what you've got in the ghettos in New York. There ain't going to be no cops.
Not even in the ghettos. It's in every neighborhood. I've been all over the city since this started, right. And there's no police.
And then you're going to find out the reality of AOC and all these people calling to get rid of the police. You know, they're going to wake up and find when you get rid of the police, guess what? You're in trouble. Because if you got trouble, there ain't nobody to call. And then as far as the crime aspect, you know, they go in, they tear up and loot. Wherever they're at, they tear up and loot every store. But you see, just like you saw in Seattle or wherever they set up that thing, Portland, wherever they set up that CHOP or whatever they called it, eventually you rob every business in that area of everything they've got of any worth. Now, you've done that. Now what are you going to do? Well, the only thing they can do at that point is move forward and take, you know, another bite at the cracker. And it just keeps on spreading. It just spreads, it spreads, it spreads. And guys, it used to be when Jason and I talked, we talked about it because it was so subtle that you didn't see it, that you wouldn't know it. Well, guess what? It's not subtle anymore.
Yeah.
Now it's in your face. Yeah. And then there's one thing that is, there's a couple of things that are unique. Number one, Black Lives Matter. Now, get this. George Soros, through his son or son-in-law, whoever it was, George Soros, they took the name Black Lives Matter and they took it over. They took over the corporate Black Lives Matters. And the corporate Black Lives Matters really has very little relevance to Black Lives Mattering. It just doesn't.
Right.
It's just a vehicle. It's just a vehicle they have latched on to where they can send their antagonistic, trained people in, and they can raise quickly an army of 1,000 or 2,000 to go at the leadership.
Yep.
Now,
it's also interesting how you told us, Larry, that Soros was funding the campaigns for sort of local politicians like Chesa Boudin. Yep. Now we see these district attorneys making decisions that have national implications and are fueling these racial tensions.
Yep. You're going to see more of it, a lot more of it.
Yeah.
I mean, Jason, this is serious. Now, we're looking at the dog, or the tail wagging the dog.
Yeah.
Let me explain that. What is, folks, reality is that those protests are made up of less than 1% or represent less than 1% of the population. Represent less than 1% of the population. Now, if you take strictly the black population, they represent somewhere only of about 2%.
Uh-huh.
Well, if you watch the media is part of the puzzle to where the media comes in and it looks like, oh God, the whole nation of black people are just falling apart and it's all going to end. Well, that's not the truth. It's a very small piece of the community, very few. Now, yes, anytime a child is killed or injured, it's sad. But, you know, what can I say? I mean, they're literally taking over. And when they got the police out in that zone, what happened? You had extortion, blackmail, killings, etc.
Oh, rapes, all kinds of stuff. There's another interesting element to it, Larry, because we've got, just even from Crowdsource the Truth here, kind of a little self-contained example of, you know, start to finish. Because on Sunday, just the other day, I went back to the City Hall occupied zone with Charles Ortel, and it was interesting to note the police had shut it down and kicked everybody out, but now the park is just totally closed. I mean, normally on a sunny Sunday afternoon, you can go and sit in City Hall Park. You could drink a cup of coffee, read a book, talk to people, enjoy the birds and trees. But now it's just off limits to everybody. So I believe that this was done because President Trump had threatened to cut federal funding to cities that were allowing these autonomous zones.
Yep.
But it is a good example of how quickly they could clear it out if they want to.
Yep. Well, remember, these autonomous zones, folks, they exist, but they don't exist. I mean, that's weird, but they exist, but they don't exist. And they can take them and move them from that part of a town or community to another part of a city and just keep bouncing around until they take everything that's there that they can get their hands on.
Right.
Very possible.
And don't you think, Larry, it's true that, I mean, if the purpose of these are agitators. This is straight copy of the Phoenix program, what they did in Vietnam, destroying towns, scaring the population, devaluing businesses, getting everybody to move out so they could come in and buy everything up and move in their, you know, NGOs and things like that. But what's happened in New York City down there at City Hall Park, it's basically a template. They won. They came and they wrecked the place, and now it's off limits to law-abiding citizens, and it's under lockdown. Why wouldn't they keep doing that everywhere?
Well, they will. And remember, these people, look at all of these different protest groups throwing rocks and everything. Look at the number of white people involved.
Yeah.
Now, in most cases, the way the system works is you send your trained antagonists in, and you get the local community fired up. Remember, you take, like Bill Clinton never let a, you know,
crisis go to waste. Yeah, I think Rahm Emanuel. Yeah.
Well, Emanuel said it, but that was the way we worked. That's the way Clinton worked. He never let one, you know, stop and not pay off.
Right.
So they take, you know, and I'm not so sure some of the shootings that killed some of these babies and young kids, I'm not so sure that somebody didn't convince one gang or another to drive by and pull that off.
Right.
And pay them money. But whether they did or they didn't, it happened. And the minute it happens, you can see the trained professionals coming and getting involved.
Yep.
I mean, it's just bizarre. And then the next thing you know, it blows up.
Yeah. You know, Larry, I've been reading the Douglas Valentine book, The CIA is Organized Crime, and it goes into great detail about the Phoenix program in Vietnam. I just think it's undeniable that we're seeing the same tactics here. The book talks about how they were first used in Vietnam, then used in Iraq. The thing is, obviously, in Vietnam in the 1960s, we didn't have social media. We didn't have the ability for these provocateurs to utilize technology to coordinate. They're texting each other. They've got maps of cities. It's quite a sophisticated operation, wouldn't you say?
You bet it is. And, if you're America and you have that mindset, you can do it over and over and over again until you put every community in the country into submission. You see,
It's a
that's
coup
the end
d'etat.
result. Yep, that's the end result. It's put everybody in submission. And then you turn around and the next thing you convince every member of society to believe that this is really happening the way, the way.
To be an organic thing rather than something that's
Yeah,
staged. But
yeah,
they've got so many of their, I mean, not just the street level paid agitator operatives. A lot of people in the comments are
right.
talking about Bill de Blasio, and we've seen mayors in cities all over the place who have literally stood down the police. I mean, when I approach police officers, individual police officers on the street, obviously they can't really say anything to me, particularly not on camera, because they'll be reprimanded, fired, who knows what. But it's clear that they're doing nothing. I've been assaulted and asked the police for help, and they tell me to call 911.
Yeah. I mean, that sounds so foreign and unrealistic, but folks, it's happening. Now, let me say this. You know how they throw water on two police officers in New York and then, all the stuff they do to humiliate them.
Yeah.
Now, if you or I did that, they'd slap handcuffs on us and take us in.
Right.
I mean, that's just a fact. So
Yeah.
tell me who is being attacked. I mean, all the Hispanics and blacks, they all claim to be whatever the minority. Well, how do you explain you and I doing that same thing and being handcuffed and taken in?
Yeah.
All of a sudden, we become the minority, don't we?
Well, the craziest
Even
thing
though
that's
we're
happened.
not.
Yeah. Larry, the craziest thing that was going on while you were off air is, there's this whole mask issue going on and all this conflicting scientific information about how deadly this virus might be, how contagious it might be. And there was a time in the beginning, maybe April, May kind of time frame, where they were literally letting huge numbers of dangerous criminals out of Rikers Island and other New York jails and prisons for fear that they might get COVID-19, and then locking up people whose only infraction was not wearing the mask. So if you're in jail for robbery or rape, we don't want you to get sick. You better go out of the jail. But if you're standing on the street having a cocktail at a bar, trying to keep the economy going or socialize, if you're standing 5.5 feet from someone, the police will smash your head on the sidewalk and take you to jail where you might get COVID-19.
Yep. I mean, I'm telling you, it's just that bad. And for the average American, they don't understand.
Yeah.
Just imagine a group of Americans that have lived their happy lives, everything the way it's supposed to be. They mow the yard, they play tennis or golf, and then they go to work and everything the way it's always been, right? Now, that person doesn't have a job.
Right.
And no promise of getting one. They live strictly. Now, here's the kicker. Here's the key, guys. They live strictly by the token the government gives them.
What do you mean?
Well, the only
the
money
$1,200
got
you
coming,
mean?
well, the $600 a month plus their unemployment. That's their livelihood now. That is their livelihood now. So they get dependent on that, right?
Yep.
I mean, anybody would. You get dependent on that. And then all of a sudden, look at the trouble you're in. Look at the trouble we're in. You will dance to the tune of the government because they're paying you.
It's
You
really
dare
nuts.
to step out of line, we'll just cut off the money and your family will have nothing. You'll starve.
Yeah. My bank no longer allows me to go in there. I have to make some kind of appointment on my phone, and then they text me I was like, what? You got my money in there. Let me in. They would not.
Mm-hmm.
It's really nuts. I mean, Larry, when you were serving the United States of America in the variety of ways that you have as a Green Beret, et cetera, did you ever imagine that something like this could possibly happen?
No, as a matter of fact, that's why I did what I did, so that it would never come here. Never. But it's
Here
here.
it is. Yeah.
I was involved in the Reagan domino theories, worried about it coming up from the South. Well, it sort of is to all the illegal immigration that's coming up through there, all the drugs that are coming up through there. But this is so much worse.
Right.
It's coming up from right within our society, and the people that are the perpetrators, the people that are doing stuff that obviously, if allowed to continue, destroy the very fabric of this country, those people are allowed now to do whatever they do, wherever they're needed. And it's over.
I mean, isn't this, Larry, the modern, the whole Antifa thing and Black Lives Matters, aren't they pretty much direct analogs for the Weather Underground and the Black Panther Party and the Black Liberation Army of the 1960s and 70s?
Yes, they are.
It's an evolution.
One exception. With one exception.
What's that?
The actual people that are the antagonists, 80 to 90% of them are white.
Right.
But they get the young people in the black communities, they're trained on how to fire them up.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's certainly not.
You didn't have that. You didn't have that in some of the 50s and 60s black organizations. You didn't have that happening. And the other thing you didn't have in the 50s and 60s that they have today, which is money.
Right.
Money.
Well, it's basically that the Weather Underground has grown up, learned from their mistakes, and their second or third or fourth or fifth time around, whatever this is, obviously Barack Obama is a weatherman. And, you've told us about Chesa Boudin, who was raised by Bill Ayers and Bernadine Dorn. San Francisco is obviously a festering pot of excrement. I mean, I'm not really one to call the kettle black while I'm sitting here in New York, but it really is astounding. In this morning's hearing, Gerald Nadler, who delayed the hearing by getting into some kind of car accident, I guess he shouldn't be eating donuts while he drives, but he said it's a myth that Antifa is creating violence. Is that not the most ignorant possible thing you could imagine?
I heard him say that when he was standing somewhere outside, and then the reporters were hitting him up, and they asked him about Antifa, and they asked him about this stuff. He said, that's a myth, and walked away.
It's ridiculous.
Now, that myth is going to take over, and I wonder, does he know it? Does he care? Or are they blind? They think they're using this stuff that's going on, these outbreaks of these cities that were, where the demonstrations are being conducted. They think they're using those to help further their chance of getting rid of Trump. And what they don't understand, those people are using them to not only get rid of Trump, but to give up the country.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it can't just be passed off on ignorance or incompetence. They're complicit. Nadler's got to know. I mean, they showed videos of throngs of people lighting police cars on fire, burning buildings down. And they continue to refer to them, even in Congress, as peaceful protesters, admonishing the Attorney General for federal marshals who work in the courthouse, defending the courthouse as people are trying to burn it down, shine green lasers in their eyes. There are agents who have been blinded permanently.
Yep. And, it's all happening, Jason. It's all happening. And if Trump is defeated, there will be such an automatic growth of all this. It'll just totally absorb this country within a week or so of his defeat. Now, then you've got the problem that I talked about, with all of this crashing communities and all of this stuff going on. Then you have the justification for the financial institutions to shut down. And here you go with the government passing out, even if you got $1 million, all anybody can draw is $60 a week. And that's the way it works. It's coming. It's coming, and it's coming like a freight train. And unfortunately, all we have to stop it with, I'm excluding Trump. I'm talking about in our government, our Senate, our Congress.
Yeah.
All we have there, supposedly on our side, are the people that are willing to get involved.
It's not too many. Rand Paul and a few others. While we're talking about the Senate, there was recently an article that came up. I guess it was a while ago, but this was updated on the 23rd, so just the other day. But the U.S. Sun, which I believe is a birdcage liner run by Rupert Murdoch, I think. So it's essentially Fox News, the Wall Street Journal, the New York Post, with a different banner on it. They're talking about a resurfaced clip of Joe Biden slamming the use of the N-word, but he's just using it openly there in the Senate, quoting someone. But I mean, if Donald Trump used that word in any context, if a video or audio recording emerged of Donald Trump uttering that word, I think we would hear it more than we would hear about how he liked grabbing cats in 2016. They just would run him out of town over that. And here we see Joe Biden being given a pass for having said it. Yep.
It all goes back, I guess, the simplest way to identify all of this, it goes back to Khrushchev. When he said on the floor of the UN, took his shoe off, remember, and beat it on the table. He said that they would destroy America from within. I'm cutting short his entire statement, of course, but he said the destruction of America was already here, and it would destroy, America would be destroyed from within. And I'll be damned if that's not what happening today.
Wow. And I got to ask you, Larry, there's been a lot of guests while you were gone who have spoken about things that I suspect you might have some knowledge about. And you bring up Khrushchev. There was this time after he was kicked out of Oxford, Bill Clinton, I'm talking about, of course, Rhodes Scholar.
Right.
And we've been talking with David Hawkins about how Cecil Rhodes had this 200-year plan. He wrote a manifesto about capturing British Dominion citizens of the United States, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and basically turning them into double agents to take over the world. And now we see Susan Rice, we see Cory Booker, certainly James Woolsey as the head of the CIA, Bill Clinton. They were all Rhodes Scholars. Do you know why Bill Clinton was kicked out of Oxford, what the circumstance was? Did he ever discuss that with you?
Oh, yeah. He got kicked out because after the first week he was there, he didn't ever come back into any of the stuff. He went, after his first week, he caught a train and spent probably 6 to 8 weeks the first time in Russia.
Right. Soviet Union at the time. And nobody could travel there. How did he, as a barely, he didn't have a lot of money and he was like a teenager. How the hell did he get to the Soviet Union in the 1960s?
He did.
Did he ever tell you about that? How he made it?
Well, yeah, I mean, he was McClellan's bastard son, Senator McClellan.
Uh-huh. And so did McClellan...
And, he had all kinds of power that other Rhodes Scholar people there did not have. Bill had it, and everybody knew it, and he flaunted it. And, he went. He went and did anything he wanted to do.
But, I mean, what was he doing there? Did they turn him into an agent of some kind in the Soviet Union?
Well, now that's where he never, mysteriously, he never told me, Patterson Perry, or any of us what he was doing there.
That's interesting.
Never did. And then when one of us would bring up, well, were you being trained to be a spy? He'd go, oh, get out of here. He'd make some flippant remark. But we never knew. We never knew, but he, for some reason, was quick and proud to boast that he never showed up for any of the classes. And as you know, it was only when he was elected president that they gave him the honorary, degree.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then you and I have spoken a little bit. Sorry, what were you going to say?
Well, I mean, that's just the way it was. Make
Robin
it not make
Sullivan,
sense, make it make sense.
Robin Sullivan is saying it's Fulbright, not McClellan. Was that right? William Fulbright?
No, it was Senator McClellan. A lot of people said it was Fulbright, but it wasn't. At least that's not who he told me it was.
Huh. Yeah, I mean, who knows? The guy seems to lie all the time. But the other character that was associated with Bill Clinton in his younger days is this guy Strobe Talbott, who then was the, I guess he was like the director of the Brookings Institution, which is coming up a lot with this whole Russiagate thing. They've got that Lawfare blog that Ben Wittes and Shane Harris put out a lot of information on. What do we know about Strobe Talbott?
Well, Strobe Talbott was a hanger-on with Bill Clinton from day one when he was Attorney General in a small part of Arkansas. And then, when Bill Clinton was president, of course, he was introduced to the Washington Jet Set crew, as were many of Clinton's longtime buddies. And he was, he learned the Washington whatever, and he was a part of a lot of Bill Clinton slipping away to have his, affairs with all the women and stuff. And then now, isn't it odd, we find that he was with the, he was there with
the dossier.
The dossier. God, my mind, you have to forgive me, folks.
No, it's okay, Larry. Don't worry about it.
Still scrambled.
That's where I was trying to get you to, is this dossier.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right? And we've also got...
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly it. I mean, that's exactly... And I promise you, Strobe Talbott and the Brookings Institute created that thing.
Well, and Cody Shearer seems to have played a role as well. This guy, Cody Shearer, and there's a whole relationship there with the Clintons, Cody Shearer. They seem to be moving things through these operatives where, one person tells another person. Are they just doing that, Larry, to complicate the trail? So, they always like to tell somebody else to tell somebody to do something?
Absolutely. Remember, we had a saying, always run a tight loop.
Mm-hmm.
And, if, almost in a military classified top secret atmosphere, I mean, you knew what you knew and you didn't know any more.
Right.
And you'd have to know who took what you knew and used it I mean, it just constantly plausible deniability. It was constantly setting up anybody under Clinton would be forced to fall on their sword as long as Clinton ran free.
Right. And Larry, during the time that you were kind of out of commission there's been a lot going on with Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. A lot of speculation. She's allegedly in jail here in Brooklyn, but it's very curious because, they say that they arrested her at this house in New Hampshire and brought her to Brooklyn, and she appeared in court. But so far, all we've seen, and I mean, this is a really detailed court sketch, in my opinion. It looks like kind of a pastel artist's rendering. The court sketches that I've seen are usually done in pencil and ink and a lot less detailed than this. Do you find it strange that we haven't seen a paparazzi photo of Ghislaine Maxwell? No prison guard has snapped a cell phone picture of her and sold it to TMZ. Yep. What's going on with Ghislaine Maxwell, you think, Larry?
Money. She has put somewhere around 20 million in Cayman. She put another 60 million in another offshore account, and they are pretty much running the court rather than the court running them. She is almost at this point too big to prosecute. Almost.
Yeah.
And you're not gonna see any paparazzi. You're not gonna see any sneak photos of her, etc. You're just not gonna do it.
I just question if she's even there. They've got her appearing in court by video. She could do that from a film set in France that looks like a Brooklyn jail cell.
The only thing I know is she can move around, but she cannot leave the country, which is a joke. She can leave the country anytime she wants to.
Huh.
She has the money to get her own plane and just fly out.
Right.
A lot of the people that can't leave the country, they would typically have to get some sort of commercial flight out of the country, and of course they'd get caught and they'd get stopped. Right. Not her.
Yeah.
And as long as she maintains her little black book of who all was there, who all went and visited, who all partook in the young girls or whatever that was going on there, whoever's names were in her book.
Right.
Protect her.
Now, I don't know if you saw this story, Larry, but there was a pretty bizarre story in the Daily Mail, the UK newspaper, claiming that alternative news journalist Jacob Wall was paid $25,000 by Ghislaine Maxwell to smear Epstein victims and to get prosecutor Jeffrey Berman fired in an attempt to stall sex trafficking. But how can this guy Jacob Wall have any impact on the firing of a U.S. attorney? He's like a 30-year-old guy who has kind of no clout.
Well, he has no clout, but he's got the clout of Epstein, and he's got the clout of all the people that are in the black book.
No, this guy Jacob Wall, he's just an independent. He's just an independent guy they paid.
I know, but when they paid him, they had already greased with judges and prosecutors, etc. And so he was able to go into these people that were fixing to roll or whatever and explain to them, you dance with me, this thing goes away or whatever.
I mean, I guess he got caught.
He didn't have it personally. Yeah, he didn't have it personally, but Epstein and them provided him with the power, quote unquote, to make the threats real.
Right. He was representing them, so whoever he spoke to about it, I guess, knew what was being spoken about. But there's a lot of evidence that causes us to at least speculate about why U.S. Attorney Jeffrey Berman would have been fired. It seemed like, when I went to his press conference before Epstein was dead, when they arrested him, he seemed to be sincere in his effort to prosecute Epstein. Very interesting that Epstein died, and then William Barr fired this guy. He resisted that. And then we got pretty quickly this, what was her name? This woman who's the acting U.S. Attorney, Strauss. I forget her first name. But I got to say, her press conference was far less impressive. The indictment had photos of the house, photos of Ghislaine Maxwell with Epstein. I mean, it was quite ridiculous as far as indictments go. Have you ever seen indictments with photo illustrations that were not exhibits of weapons or something like that? It's just like snapshots of the people.
It was the most amateurish presentation I've ever seen, especially, at that level. That level that it was just amateurish. That's all I can say to you. It was just ridiculous.
Yeah.
But when you control the judges, the prosecutors, etc., you don't have to worry about the quality of your presentation. You just don't.
I want to ask you another question about lawfare, because I know you've been in a lot of these, consulting with people and observing these kind of trials, and even bringing some legal action yourself against the Clintons. Again, while during the period you and I weren't in contact, I have interviewed Alan Dershowitz, and he spoke quite a bit about Epstein, Maxwell, Bill Clinton, the Rothschilds, etc. I've become extremely curious about some of these civil lawsuits. For instance, one of the alleged victims of Jeffrey Epstein, Virginia Roberts Giuffre, has sued Alan Dershowitz for defamation. And there was a very strange ruling from the judge. Judge Preska, in the civil matter, ordered Giuffre's attorney to destroy some piece of evidence. And I just wonder, can you conceive of any method where Dershowitz and maybe some other party would be manipulating evidence and certain parameters of a civil case in an effort to try to disrupt the criminal charges against Maxwell?
No, I haven't. I mean, just being honest, I haven't, but I do not doubt that it exists or that it's been done.
Could be somewhere.
And Dershowitz, I guarantee you, he knows the law.
Yeah. Seems to be a good friend of Bill Clinton's. Have you ever, maybe that was later after you've met Dershowitz?
No. You bet many times.
What's your impression of him?
Both with a little bit snobby.
Yeah.
Maybe a lot snobby, but he's one of the few people that has the right in his area to be snobby.
Just because he's been so successful.
Yeah. Good heavens. He's the class that all lawyers want to go through. Every lawyer would give their right foot to be able to have gone through his classes.
His Harvard law classes and all that kind of stuff.
Yep.
It's still playing out, the whole thing with Ghislaine Maxwell. I found it very interesting. I don't know if you and I have discussed this very much, but I noticed these frequent occurrences of the number 33, and her criminal complaint is 20CR330. So I always feel like that's used as a steganographic marker to send a message to people who might be wondering, is this thing under control or is this a real arrest? You think there's any chance that what's happening with Ghislaine Maxwell is theater for all of us out here, we the people, and that she's going to be somehow never seen or heard from again?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. They're not going to be able to kill her off like Epstein if he was killed.
Right.
They're just not. But she will be a name forgotten.
But from your background in kind of clandestine operations and stuff, are you aware of any situation where, let's talk about Epstein, not him specifically, but someone like that, where it's presented publicly that this person has died, but in reality he's just secreted out of the prison, sent somewhere far away, and he's safe, protected somewhere. He's dead as far as the courts are concerned, so his evidence is never coming around, his criminal cases are never coming around, he's never going to be called to testify, and he's off somewhere, living his life.
Yep.
You're aware of that
I
happening?
mean, yes, I'm very much aware of that happening. Did I have anything to do with any of it? No, but it was done. It was done quite often, actually, more often than you would think. I'll give you a case in point, Webb Hubbell.
Yeah. Webb Hubbell, what happened to him?
Well, you notice Hubbell was convicted for perjury, and then he was sent as a part of his, he was sent to prison, but they had a recording from he and his wife, which I've heard, and I made sure it got out, where she is telling him, look, just tell them what they want to know. And he kept telling her to hush up, shut up. He'd be all right. Well, he served his 18 months in a holiday hotel, minimum security thing, golf course, etc. And then when he got out, Jackson Stevens gave he and his wife his house, as long as he kept his mouth shut. Big old house in Pleasant Valley in Little Rock. And boy, he just died away. You just never heard of Webb Hubbell anymore. He just faded into nothingness.
But any specific examples of someone, like with Epstein, we're told he's dead. I have suspicions that death was faked, because the picture that was shown in the New York Post, which of course is controlled by Rupert Murdoch, the nose looked nothing at all like Jeffrey Epstein's nose. And my real curiosity is, do they ever have operations where they stage a death to make it look like some high-level operative?
Yes.
They do.
Yes. Like I said, I wasn't involved in any one of those. But yes, I heard about them. They did happen, or so I'm told.
Not surprised. Well, Larry, we're just about out of time. I do want to remind people that for Larry's birthday tomorrow, and also, just in honor of the fact that he's back, he's still here with us. It's amazing, Larry. You're like the Energizer Bunny. They just can't stop you. And it would be the perfect time to send Larry a birthday card, maybe stick some money in the card, send it over to him there in Conway, Arkansas, or you could just log on to paypal.com and using his Nichols Live at AOL.com PayPal address, send him money, let PayPal know you're a friend, and Larry will get your financial contribution. And Larry, certainly if you're feeling well enough, it would be great to have you back next week. We can continue the conversation and see what else is going on. Anything you want to say before we wrap up?
No, I'm sorry about being a little scattered. I'm still a little screwed up from where I've been, or from what happened. But, folks, this is your country, and I would advise you to bring people to this program, because now you've got tangible proof of what the future could be.
Yeah.
Unless we stop it.
Absolutely.
And the only way we're going to stop it, everybody gets caught going off, worrying about this part of it, worrying about that part of it. Forget it. You need to focus like a laser. We have one mission, one thing we can do to stop it, and that is to make sure everybody we can votes for Trump. You may not like him. He was not elected Pope. He was elected president. There is no doubt, for those that wonder, his plans with the economy have worked out tremendously until the virus hit. And any president upon this virus coming in would be in trouble.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Larry, we'll be back with some more next week. We've got a couple people in the comments who are saying you should check your PayPal. So happy birthday again tomorrow. And thanks so much for joining me tonight. And I'll be back in just 3 hours with more pain. People who are sponsors on subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth or patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth can enjoy those sponsor exclusive shows. Join us tonight for more pain. Mike Moore is going to drop some previews of an explosive interview where Dr. Judy Mikovits shares even more commentary about everybody's favorite vertically challenged doctor, Mr. Fauci there. So we'll be back for that. Larry, thanks so much for joining me. I'll speak to you real soon. Great to see you back.
See you next week. All right. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks for watching, everybody. Take care.